Okay, we're here. We're live. Hey, everybody. How's it going? It's Seth. I'm coming to you live today. We're going to talk about recognizing media bias. Now, before you get all freaked out, we're not going to get political here. We're not going to go into any of the issues of the day. We're just simply going to talk about how to filter media because everyone needs to have this skill, whether you're a layperson or not. But if you're in church leadership and you're next to people who can help make decisions about whether or not we reopen or whether or not we institute mask policies, things like that. There's a lot of opinion out there. And one thing we can or should agree on is that opinions do not equal facts. We have to find facts. And so for us, we have to sift through a lot of garbage sometimes to get to the facts. So I want to talk about bias really quick and help you understand how to recognize it and what to look for so that when someone says, hey, we should do XYZ, you can go, well, hang on. Let's look at these things and let's not overreact, right? Because responding is better than reacting. And churches are great at reacting. So what I want to do is I want to walk through two kinds of bias and then some things to look for. So here's what we look for. Not getting political, not trying to take a stance. Just want to help you understand how to navigate media bias. So here we go. First, let's take a look at implicit bias. Implicit bias is an unconscious bias, right? It's just there. You may not even know it's there, but it causes you to behave or speak in a contradictory manner. So you'll say, I think this, but then do something different and think there's no problem. And so sometimes in media, there is an implicit bias in just what is said that is inflammatory or misrepresenting. And it's just, it's not intentional maybe, but it is definitely something to pay attention to. When you look at implicit bias, it's very subtle. It's very hard to understand. It's the difference between, how, say, one news channel will present the same exact story versus another. There's a lot of implicit bias based on how they present that information. So watch out for implicit bias. It is just there. It's subtle. You may not recognize it. It's one of the hardest ones to recognize in yourself, to be honest. But implicit bias is the first. The second is this, called confirmation bias. Now, social media makes this whole thing go from being just a common enemy to a disaster, right? Confirmation bias is a search for confirmation of what you already think that ignores valid dissent. So basically, it's finding a lot of people who already agree with what you think and compiling evidence rather than trying to find the truth. And that is something I think many of us are guilty of as well, myself included. So be careful when you are looking at certain articles, certain news sources, sites, etc., that you're actually looking at dissent as well, if it's valid dissent. Now, if it's some crazy person saying this random thing, yeah, we're going to talk about how to recognize that. But when it's valid dissent, we need to have a full picture. It's important to be able to sift through that. But confirmation bias is often confirmed by a social media algorithm whose number one goal is to make sure that you see things that you like and agree with on their platform. Remember that when you're surfing Facebook, that Facebook is not trying to help you find truth. It's trying to help you feel good and right and on the right side. So remember that when you're looking at the things that Facebook is showing you. Don't use it as a news source specifically. All right, so here's some things to look for in articles, in media, when we're watching videos and trying to figure out what the heck is actually going on. Because as communication professionals in the church, our job is to be the CEO of knowing what the heck is going on. And often we don't know what's going on. And people are like, what do we do? And you're like, B? I don't know. C? Is that 75? So we're trying to figure it out too. So let's take a look at some of these things you can pay attention to that will help you see the bias. First thing, search for truth, not evidence. I said that. Pay attention to the type of language used. Now, what I mean by this is pay attention to the adverbs and the adjectives that are used. They can be positive or negative. When the person writes a story or gives a story on video, there will be certain things that they say that are just kind of part of who they are and how they talk. But then there will be other words that are used that are meant to serve a purpose, whether it's to make you feel a certain way. So a good question to ask in the type of language is, how are they trying to make me feel about this? Recognize how does the writer want me to feel about the subject they're discussing? If they are discussing a policy or a person, what do they want me to feel about them other than just knowing the facts that they're trying to tell me? That's a good red flag to have up all the time when you're reading news, as you try to go, okay, well, how do I convey what my opinion is to my pastor or the leadership board of our church about how we're opening or what we're doing for it, whatever. So pay attention to the type of language used, because the news runs on ads. And so they know that if you click their ads, or you click their stories, you'll eventually click their ads, and they get paid for that. And so if they can get you mad enough or emotionally invested enough, because that is the new currency. It used to be attention. Attention is still it, but really it's emotional investment. If they can hook you with emotional investment, that translates into money so quickly for people in the advertising business, so fast. So remember, they are trying to get you to feel something so that you will do something. Be on the lookout for what that might be. All right. Pay attention to the language. Number 2, pay attention to the headline story agreement. I don't know how many times I've clicked a headline and then read the story, and it was like the headline was meant to just get people who would normally disagree with what the story is to read the story, and or share it so that other people might read the story and be, it's a trick. That happens sometimes, especially with some of the more, to the sides, more or less in the middle type news outlets and organizations that exist to simply stir up controversy. So make sure that you're paying attention to the headline story agreement. So before you share something, especially, did you open it? Did you read it? Did you read the first couple paragraphs at least? Is the headline honest? That's what you want to look at, because so many people just read the stupid headline and are led into bad thinking because they didn't read the article and you shared it. So you're part of that. You did that. So don't do that. Pay attention to the sources, the URL, and the people cited. Now, this is a little bit deeper dive. So if something's really important enough for you to go, I'm going to share this, then it should be important enough for you to do a little bit of research, because nowadays you just have to. You can't. Gone are the days where it's like, oh, an article from a news source, I trust it, share. There's always been bias in media, always, because people are biased and people write media. They write the stories, they do the videos. But today, it's intentional. It's like sinister. And so you have to be aware of the source. And I mean, like the URL. It might be cnn.co, and that's not their website. Somebody bought a website, and they probably have all these now, but cnn.co, and they're giving you stories and making it look like it's CNN, it's legit or whatever, and it's not. It's not them. It's not CNN. So you have to pay attention to the URL. You have to pay attention to the people they cite. I saw a news story the other day that was a guy. They cited a guy saying something that supported their headline, but it was a guy that was like a ex-leader of the KKK, and it was like, well, I don't care what that guy has to say. It's like when you know that, it gives the story a different feel. So it's like, just pay attention to that, because they will slide something in there and make you feel like so-and-so said this. I don't know how many times a quote, because that is testimonial, word of mouth is powerful. It is the most powerful thing that you can do to leverage your brand out into the world, or your church out in the world, is that people talk about you. And when you can quote someone, it's powerful. It's motivational for others who read that. And so when they put a quote into a story, it's to give authority. But look at who they're quoting. Maybe the person they're quoting does not deserve that authority, and you didn't know. You just saw quotation marks and thought, oh, legit, because a lot of people do that. So be careful. Pay attention to the context. The context. What is happening around this? I don't know how many videos we've seen where we're like, we don't really know what's going on in this video. We just see this slice. That's a legitimate argument. I don't like to say that a lot, because sometimes what you're seeing in the video is enough to go, what I saw was wrong. It doesn't really matter what happened before. People shouldn't behave this way. So some of that is valid in there. We can talk about it, but understand the context of what's happening. And if you don't understand the context, do a little digging. Recently we saw this Well, I'll get to that in a second. But context. Understand the context of what you're reading. Is it being represented correctly? Do you understand all the things going on around it? Is there a reason that this is being said the way it's being said, etc.? All right. Pay attention to who benefits from the story. It should be you. You should be the one benefiting by being informed. But if it is swaying you to behave a certain way or feel a certain thing, then it is the person who's writing the story. They're benefiting from your love of them and hatred of what they're talking about or who they're talking about, or vice versa. Or your love of them as being a great news source and the people they're praising are great. So be careful to pay attention to who benefits from the story, because at the end of the day, there's somebody out there making money off of your emotion. And when it comes to the news media, you have to make sure you know who that is. All right, last is the most important one. If you didn't get here, I'm sorry. I should have done this first, but here's the most important one. Pay attention to unsubstantiated claims and misrepresented facts. This is super important. Unsubstantiated claims means that I can go out and say, Senator John Smith, in his worst campaign season ever. Well, that's unsubstantiated claim. How do I know it's the worst? What am I basing that on? How do you know I'm telling the truth? I've just sensationalized a whole section of this man's life, and you didn't bat an eye because that's just how we talk. But it's an unsubstantiated claim, and now you feel like, yeah, that guy is an idiot. It's in the back of your mind. You may not know why you feel that way. It's very subtle. But if you're reading a news source that already talks about the other side that you don't like, it's easy to go with it. It's just easy to go with it, and it doesn't help anybody to be honest about facts and truth. Remember, truth, not evidence. Don't worry about the evidence, because if you're searching for truth, you'll find evidence. Evidence should lead you to truth. You should not just try to find evidence just to back up your claim, because you can find evidence for pretty much anything. There's a whole bunch of yahoos out there that'll say whatever you want them to say. So, you can even take the Bible, something that is very legitimately true, and take words out of context, take phrases out of context, and make it support kind of whatever you want it to support. You can really do that. We did it with slavery for years. That's pretty terrible, but we did it. And there were, God-fearing Christian men and women who are telling you that God wants black people to be your slaves. And they use the scripture to prove it. Look at all the slavery in the Bible, and misrepresented the whole thing completely. So unsubstantiated claims and misrepresented facts. This is a bad one right now, especially with all the charts and graphs going around. With all the charts and graphs, it's easy to go, well, look, it's going up. Look, it's going down. That's a simplistic view of statistics. So I would go, who understands how to read statistics? What do they say is happening? Go to those types of people, because somebody on a microphone just saying whatever they want to say about stats and facts and whatever, and characterizing them however they like, not helpful. So when we're looking at the media, how it's being presented, are they checking this person? Are they, one of the things I loved about the recent interview with Chris Wallace is that, like Trump or not, Chris Wallace did his job as an interviewer by saying, here's what the facts say. No, this is not correct. This is not true. He pushed. That's what good journalism is supposed to do. They're supposed to find the truth, not the story, because the story is the truth. There's a saying, it's like, truth is better than fiction, and it's true. And you can't write some of the crazy things that you can find a story about. So good journalism is finding the truth of something, not just getting the story you want to tell to people. So that's called marketing. When you're just finding a story you want to tell to someone to get them to do something, that's marketing. The truth is something else. The truth is whatever it says is what we go with. We let the truth define who we are, what we think. So check out unsubstantiated claims and misrepresented facts. And I'll be honest, if you're seeing a lot of that, that is a reason not to trust that news source, that person, whatever. Unsubstantiated claims and misrepresented facts, when they're just going crazy with that kind of stuff, it just creates chaos and confusion, and nobody knows who to trust. So everybody then begins to equate their opinions with facts, and that leads us to just generalized stupidity. And I think that we can all look around and say, we've got a little bit of that right now, just a little bit of that. So be careful when you're looking at the media. It is something that has always been very near and dear to my heart. I have people in my family that are involved in the news media. I actually got to go and talk to my brother-in-law's class He teaches at a college on news media and social media and how it affects our culture and how it affects the world around us. Really, really fun, really great. He's a great teacher. His name's Brad. He's awesome. But I talk with him a lot, talk with a lot of my family who are in news media. I have some friends that are in the news that have been on the podcast. In fact, if you want to look at what Alex Fram Johnson, it's a deep back issue, but she was in the news. She was in the media business. She worked for a news station. Go check that one out. We talked about how to find stories in your church and tell them. It was really helpful, but she is just a great resource. There's so many people that are trying to help fact check things because there's so much confusion. And we have to be able to acknowledge that right now. The church has to wade into these conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. Some of you may go, I don't like what you said about this. That's fine. That's fine. You know what? I'm not going to kick you out of this group for that. I'm not going to be mad at you for that. You know what? Because that's what adults do. Adults don't call each other names and result to toddler playground fights where just to get our way. We don't resort to that. We talk about things. We agree. We disagree. We try to hammer things out because that's what family does. And this is the family of God, at least, definitely the human family. But I hope that you guys are watching the media and taking notes and just trying to be responsible with it. I don't have all this figured out. You know, maybe you'll hear something I said and go, that's not quite right. Feel free to hit me up in the comments of this video and let me know what you think about it. I realize now I have not had the comments on at all. Is anybody? Oh, Keith is there. Hey, man. What's up, man? Keith Brabender. Keep speaking truth. Hey, doing my best. Hope it's helpful. I will say this, check this out. I did a blog on this. If you want to go deeper dive, I'll drop it in the comments, but here it is. You can see it's called Recognizing Bias in Online News Media. And it's much more in depth. I give you more on each of these. I give you a few more red flags to look out, some things to actually do, and even some sources and some sites to check out that help you fact check things. And there's even like, look at this. Where was it? Evaluating news story, how to take bias. Classes on media literacy. Can you see this right here? That right there is like online courses from a college on how to interpret news and media bias. Free. It's really great. It's like you can audit a class. It's pretty great. I think everyone should probably look into that or something like that to recognize how to recognize this type of bias. It does. And there's more than just the two types of bias. There's all kinds of stuff to watch out for. To get into it would be a college course. Who knew that in 2020 we would all need this in our college resume and none of us have it. So I don't know about you, but I'm just overwhelmed right now. I don't even work in the church anymore on staff. I volunteer. I'm in a church. We're trying to make it work just like you are. We have under 100 people. And, oh, hold on. Josh Givens, my communications bachelor's was specifically in broadcast journalism. I think it's great you're highlighting this stuff for folks. Nicely done. Thanks, man. Hey, appreciate that. Hey, if you want to throw things in here, jump in, man. Throw some comments, places you know to look for media. Because here's the thing. We just have so much hitting us. And then everybody around us in our church is being hit with it too. And like, we have to sift through that for them. And gosh, who has time for all that? So anyway, I hope that you will do a little work in this area because it is a way you can serve your pastor and serve your leadership at your church. If it's not you, the pastor yourself doing it, then I think it's something that it's one of those skills that we didn't know we'd need. And, you know, when you went to seminary, they didn't know you'd ever need this. Just like I remember going to seminary and they taught a class on how to run Keynote. Keynote. Like, and it was like, we have a great AV program is that we teach pastors how to run Keynote. And I'm like, great. My 8th grader just did a whole presentation in PowerPoint. You know, it's like, that's not impressive. There's so much more you need now that is just, and I make jokes. Obviously I'm not trying to kick you, but it's like just to show just how far we have to go with this media stuff now. I remember when Facebook came out, when YouTube came out, and it was just some silly little thing. I never thought it would be the behemoth messer of things that it is. And so I'm praying for you guys. Let me know if I can help you with anything. And God bless you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep pushing ahead. And I get to speak at several conferences coming up. It's really exciting. I'll be announcing some of those things. And what I'm teaching at these free conferences is how to think about digital strategy mixed in with your in-person strategy for when you open back up. I think it's going to be really helpful. I'm giving you a framework, giving you some ideas, some thoughts. Hopefully you'll be able to benefit from it too. And probably what I'll do is take one of those talks and I'll just drop it here in the group for people to have. Or I may just do a presentation specifically for you. We'll see. Man, good to see you guys. Hope you have a great day. Later.